I'm live? Okay. I guess I'm live. It's good to know at 69 that I'm not dead. That's Kyle over here. And as you can see, we're trying something new. Have you ever heard of Zoom? Yeah, I know, ad nauseum, right? But since this is going to be the last Tequila Tuesday of 2020, we thought I would, rather than pick my 10 best photos, my favorite 10, I actually found 70. So I'm a typical photographer. So it's more like a year in review. So I'm very happy that you guys are here. Paramal has got an obligation with his son, but we'll be back next year. And I might as well say next year will begin on February 2nd. And we will look for the best question of February, of the beginning of New Year, and give away Pathways to Creativity. The entire package will be given to the person that has the most salient question. And if you tie in how good looking I am and how sweet I am and what a great photographer, there's a good likelihood you may win that competition. Thank you, Libby. Libby's over there with tequila, laughing as I talk, which is always a good thing. Yeah, and Libby's sick. Okay, here's the clank. So this is real tequila. Anyway, thank you guys and ladies for joining us tonight. I've got a lot of good questions. In fact, I think we announced that for the 5 best questions, we're going to give away a book. And in fact, there's 19 questions here, and they're all good. So we're going to give everybody a book, and the book will be Migrations. So this is one of my favorite books of all time, and we're going to give that to everybody that sent in a question. Not the people now that are waking up and sending in really quick questions like, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? Oh, I just realized I've got to look at the green dot above the image, not at myself, which is really tough. Anyway, if you do own this book already, we're still going to give this book to you, but let us know how to inscribe it. So all books will be inscribed. We really thank you. Now I have to do the adult stuff and put on my glasses and read some of these questions. I can't read them all because I've got a whole lot of photos to show you, and we do have 45 minutes or an hour to do this, okay? So great questions. Andy Patrick, long-term friend of mine, haven't seen him in years, sent in this question. Can you talk to us a bit about what you still have to document? After all these amazing expeditions, images, and adventures, what's left for Art's eye to capture, for Art's heart to share with us all? I think that's a great question. And you get a book for that one. Anyway, really the answer for me, honestly, Andy, is from time to time, I go, of course, back to the same locations, but in the interim, while I wasn't there, my eye, my visual intellect, if you will, gets better. And so simply put, I am photographing often the same subject, but with maybe a sense of motion. You saw Nevada Weir photograph new subjects or old subjects with infrared on Earth as Our Witness. So we photographers come back to the same subjects often, but we are evolving, nothing stays the same, and we have new visions of old subjects. And so that's the real answer to that. Of course, I'm trying to navigate to new locations all the time, but many, many of the tried and true subjects I'm revisiting with a better idea, a more nuanced eye. And I think I answered that. Here's a question from Harley Cowan. We hear a lot about your current process. I'd be really interested to hear a session that dives into the way you worked when it was all film, but not a tired digital versus film debate. I think that's a good question. And so the answer for that, Harley, is basically when I was shooting film, I was shooting way more exposures of the same subject because I was just as neurotic as anybody else. And if you're, for instance, in winter in Tibet and you wouldn't see your film for 3 months, you can bet every time I took a picture of the summit of Mount Everest, that was like taking 2 rolls of film. And so I had all this redundancy. And so that's how I shot. And a lot of my exposures, a lot of the wildlife and the cultures were always slightly out of focus because I was working in the margins of the day. And so, again, I would have to shoot a lot of photos in excess because I just couldn't corroborate right on the spot whether I got the shot or not. So basically, film to me was great because that's all I knew. But in today's world, and I don't want to make it the debate that you wanted to avoid, but digital makes everything easier. Anyway, so that's a great question. Nancy Cliff Bergenson says, I am wondering whether you shoot macro photography. And the answer is not true macro. There are friends of mine that have microscopes and they're photographing dead bugs and they're taking multiple exposures and slightly altering the depth of field so that they can combine it. That's truly macro and or microscopic. I shoot, my macros are largely maybe within 1 or 2 inches of the subject. And they're extreme close-ups. And yes, I do a lot of that. In fact, you may see a couple photos tonight. You know, the people that really do that macro, they get into it so much. That's basically their bailiwick. That's what they love to do. And they're showing us the world in a different way. So I really respect that they're doing that. Hi, Art. This is from Mitch Darby. Hi, Art and Paramal and Libby and Gabrielle and Absentia. Okay, Porky Pig right there. My question goes all the way back to episodes 3 and 4. As an architect, I particularly enjoyed those 2 episodes. Basically, when I was walking around my house, and Mitch really liked that. So he's wondering whether we would ever do a book like that. And in fact, in this year, this sucky year that we've been all kind of isolating, I have done a lot of work shooting abstracts in the garden. I've been photographing in the house with late light. You know, I'm on a normal year, I'm not home very often. And so this year I've explored intimately the house and the garden. And I think someday there will be a book, and living like an artist definitely is the tack to take, as you suggested, Mitch, in the question. Tom Kogat is another good friend of mine. And he said, hey, here you go, Art. Could you please describe how your photography business model has changed over your career, especially related to the change from film to digital photo era? What were the biggest challenges and opportunities from a business standpoint? Well, drastically, things changed in 2008. It was a world in crisis. Basically, we had this world crash in our economy. At the same time, really the internet came into its own, and people, even hobbyist photographers, could get their work represented by agencies around the world. At that point, most of the income that Art Wolfe Incorporated generated really came through the stock agencies, and it was quite lucrative for a couple of years, and then it just went away. In 11 months, it just crashed. So we had to reinvent ourselves, much like a crab on the beach, running towards the water and running away from the wave. And so we basically put more emphasis on guiding tours, as many of my colleagues have done, and teaching. And I have a background in, I've got a teaching certificate. So I love teaching and communicating to people, you know, ideas. And so we just ratcheted that up, and including world tours, and we haven't stopped from that. But I still need to nourish my soul and do the books. Whether I ever make money from the books, I've said this before, it's a reason to get out of bed. So Tom, yeah, the biggest challenges was dealing with the fact that no longer were we making income from stock business. And the opportunities are obvious. I mean, digital allows us to shoot shots we never could have done in the age of film. So that was a benefit. And also the internet was a benefit too, because we're here. You know, people are watching us. You know, prior to the internet, it was really hard to get your name out unless you occasionally got a magazine article. And so that was it back then. Today, the world's our oyster. And basically, the people that really want to get a name, they have to really work on their sites, their websites. All the social media is a way of kind of cutting through. I mean, it's a very complex world. There's a lot more people on the planet than when I first started out. And I did the math. I started out when I was 19, was when I really got serious into photography. And that was 50 years ago. So the world has changed. Far fewer people back then. I knew almost all the photographers that had a reputation in the nature world on a world scale. I knew them all. And now it's like, even in Seattle, there's a lot of very fine photographers I've never met or have or probably will meet. So it's a big, big world we live in. I'm going to answer a couple more and then we'll get on to the photos. But all these questions that came in, everybody gets a book, but also get to these questions on February 2nd. I'll be heading off to Africa in 2 weeks. And when I come back, then we'll start Tequila Tuesday, but through the Zoom medium. So if you like this medium and the way the photos will appear, then let us know, all right? But this will also be attached to YouTube, and we're gonna put more emphasis in the years to come in YouTube as a way of communicating to people like the ones watching us tonight. All right, let me see.
People are liking all of your answers.
Oh, good, 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 good. Well, maybe I'll embellish those answers a little bit more. I do like tequila. All right, here we go. Are there areas or subjects in photography that you feel are relatively still untouched? Not really. I mean, virtually we live at a time where we can go to the farthest corners of the earth. Obviously, the deep oceans are a big area that we have just lightly explored. But what I said earlier about Andy Patrick's question still resides. You can go to places over and over again, and if your mind and your intellect's there, you can come up with new ways of telling the old stories. And that's the way creativity happens. And, you know, painters have been doing that, sculptors have been doing that, photography is perfect for that. So don't feel like everything's been told or done. And in the world of publishing, you know, a book can come out every couple of years on the same subject by different people. And there's a new audience for that. You know, National Geographic famously would recycle stories every 10 years. So just don't feel like it's all been told and it's all been done. There's new ways of seeing, and it's about your own imagination. I often go to my library and pore over painting art books, and I'll see something that will create the beginning of an idea, and then I just ruminate on it for a while, and then it can grow into a complete new idea and project. So, you know, absorb what other people have done and try to put your own unique slant on it. Photography and creativity is where you want to put your time anyways. Okay, I think we'll get to the rest of these questions on February 2nd. All right, did I talk about the grand prize? Yes, okay. And the books, check, check, check. Yep. All right, now Kyle's gone, so this is my first screen sharing moment. And he's so sure he's gonna have to run up and salvage me, and yet look just how smooth that was. Anyway, okay, so Tequila Tuesday, last week I was in Hawaii, and you'll see a few of those photos tonight. So the year, yeah, for all of us, it's been a challenging year, a dramatic year. We're all very happy when it ends and a new year begins. And yeah, we'll still have to be resilient on social distancing. When I went to Hawaii last week, you can't believe the hula hoops we jumped through and the COVID tests that we went through. And it's a great place to go for the winter. But if you go on Alaska Airlines, as I did, they require a test, and then you have that test. And every restaurant we went to, every hotel we checked into, and the car rent, they all had to have proof that we're negative. And we were staying on the Big Island, and we meaning Paramal and I tried to get him over there and throw him in the volcano, but he crawled back out, and so we're stuck with him next year as well. Anyway, we had 11 days on the Big Island, and it has amazingly low numbers because they've been so diligent on keeping social distancing and being extremely careful about people being near each other. So if you're looking for a place to go in the interim, and you've got the money and you've got the time, I would go to Hawaii. Seriously. Anyway, and my COVID test came back in 20 minutes. Before I even got home, my assistant Chris was on the phone saying, okay, you're negative. I knew that, but yeah, okay, let's move on. So in January, before all the shit hit the fan, I was in a small town north of Tokyo with a couple of friends of mine, and I was photographing what they call the Naked Man Festival. And it's part of the Shinto religion. And great old temple, just beautiful, late at night, and the drama. And of course, this is for the book I'm working on called Act of Faith. So anything with human drama and emotion is catching my attention, because I don't want that book to be a book on cathedrals and mosques. It's got to have human connection and emotion involved. So this was quite nice. I loved it. And then there was the Naked Duck Festival just outside the door. Actually, these are wintering pintail ducks on a lake that was not that far away. And so pretty amazing depth of field here, great light, great subjects, pintail ducks. And they're coming in from Siberia during the winters and overnighting in Japan, on Honshu Island in particular. And this is a whooper swan, kind of lost in the sea of pintail ducks. And of that whole sequence, I think this is my favorite, just because I love the way the necks of these great wild swans are being enveloped by thousands of pintail ducks and other types of ducks. And just the way that all played out. And if you look closely, you can see ducks are standing on the backs of these whoopers. And this is kind of at a refuge where people are throwing grain out to them. Actually, a keeper is throwing grain out. And so the grain hits the back of the whooper swans, and the ducks climb up on the swans to eat from the back. And it's just a melee and great, great subjects for the camera. And yet a different lake in the Alps of Japan. So I'm laying on my belly with an extreme wide angle, and I was able to crawl up within just a few inches of these totally wild birds that are reliant on the feeding over the harsh winter months. Then I went directly from Japan in winter down to Indonesia. I flew into Bali. I flew from Bali into an island near Komodo. And then we got on a boat and went out to an island near Komodo. And this is a Komodo dragon. And they're about 9 feet long. And we always thought that there was an enzyme in their saliva that it was easy to infect humans. And now they've discovered that actually their bite is poisonous, just like a snake. And so this one is completely at ease, coming straight towards me. And the people that I was traveling with said, get up and run. And I kept on trying to get that last shot, but they are moving fast. And I wanted to get that eye-to-eye view with the largest, well, they're not the largest reptile, because of course the Nile crocodile is actually much bigger than this. But for a lizard, yeah, this guy is moving pretty fast. And I strapped a camera onto a pole that had a little wheel on the bottom. And I still was able to remain about 12 feet away from these guys, but take intimate wide angle shots. All right, so from there, I went back up into the Philippines, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, it must have been around 90 degrees, 10,000 revelers, Catholics, come out and they celebrate. And I forgot the name of it because I've been drinking tequila, but it was a celebration of baby Jesus. And so again, for the Act of Faith book, I went there. Then there was great celebrations. But as I was down there, I was also going out in the water and photographing whale sharks. So wherever I can, if I can double up on multiple book projects at the same surgical strike, it makes economic sense to do that. So as I've said before, I'm working on 5 or 6, 7 books at one time, and I'm trying to amortize the cost of travel so I can actually make a little money from this, because unfortunately I was not born rich. There was no family money. It's either this or knocking off banks. And, you know, did I say that? Actually, no. Okay, so from there I came back to Seattle, spent a couple, maybe 10 days, and then headed south. And I headed down to Easter Island. And a book coming out next year is called Night on Earth. And I wanted to get these moas against the southern sky and the Milky Way. And in the southern hemisphere, the Milky Way is much more pronounced than here in the north. And it just turned out beautiful. We had one clear night out of about 6 days that we were on the island. Now, the main reason we were on the island wasn't to photograph these nighttime shots. The native Polynesian Eastern Islanders were having their annual celebration. And so I was there largely for that, for the Act of Faith book, but what a great opportunity to photograph these skies. And I brought a little light that a friend of mine walked around and illuminated them from the side, from the front. And I love this one from the back because it just seems a little more mysterious to me.
People are loving the Zoom format, saying they can really see the quality of the images.
So those of you that have only been watching Tequila Tuesday through iPhones and you thought I sucked as a photographer, now you can see the photos are actually in focus, right? Thank you, Libby. Libby, let's toast one more time. What the hell? It's almost New Year's Eve. We only have one glass because I'm already slurring my words. Yeah. Oh, you noticed
Keep
that?
it limited.
You know, beer just takes way too long.
Jim Wood asks, how long were the Milky Way shots? Do you remember how long?
Yeah, I mean, to photograph the southern skies like this, I'm basically trying to hover around between 1600 ISO and 2000. And if you can get off a 20-second exposure or even a 15-second exposure, then the stars remain like pinpoints, especially with the wide angle. Because I've got fairly good cameras, I can bounce up my ISOs up to 4,000 if I want. And later in the summer, I did that when the comet came through the Northwest. But here it was bright enough. It was a clear sky, and I could get away with, I think, probably ISO 2,000 or 1,500. Great question. So the Rapa Nui Festival was going on in Easter Island. I think it was the first week in February. And so all these, and all, you know, obviously Easter Island is governed by Chile, even though it's 2,000 miles out in the southern Pacific Ocean. And the Polynesians, of course, are related to the Hawaiians and all the Pacific Islanders. And so their culture is about water. And so they had all these kind of games, which they would body surf on big waves and do all sorts of amazing things. And I later hired 3 of these gentlemen to come up and to pose at sunset, because historically the Easter Islanders would swim out to a tiny little rock, grab a bird egg in their teeth, swim back, climb up this volcano, and whoever achieved that the fastest became the hero of the year, and so forth and so on. So I had these men out overlooking from the edge of a volcano out over the ocean, and in a couple shots you can see the island in the distance, which is just a little rock. I have a tough job. You know, people should feel sorry for me that I have to do this for a living. It's one of the reasons I have to drink, just to calm my nerves. There you go. There's the island I was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
That's the comment? Oh, yes. All right. So from there, I went on the same trip. Same friends of mine. We headed south to Patagonia. And I was there for a book called Wild. And here we encountered wild mountain lions, pumas, cougars. All of them are the same animal from almost to Alaska all the way down to the southern tip of South America. And they may look slightly different, but they're the same cat. And in Patagonia, they historically would live on sheep ranches and take sheep, and the ranchers would try to shoot them. But now there's more of an economy to work with the tourism community rather than just growing sheep. And so the cats have calmed down. They're no longer so afraid of humans, and it's great opportunities to photograph cats. At one point, we had 6 cats running around us, chasing each other within 30 feet of where we were, and they were just playing and biting each other and having a great time. And another mother, and this mother I photographed the year before, and very chill cat. And this year, for the first time, she's got 2 twin spring cubs. And so I was able to get really close and photograph the cubs, which are really cute. In fact, I brought one of these home, and I've got, where's that cat? Did you see it running around here? So I've got one of the kitten cougars, only. Libby, you're gonna work for me the rest of your life. See what it takes to work for me? Just laugh and drink tequila. Tequila. Life's good. Yeah, and what they're eating is guanacos. So even the cute little things have to eat. And they're and this is one of the reasons there's so many of the mountain lions in this area, is there's thousands and thousands of guanaco, which is the largest member of the llama or llama family. Okay, from there I went by myself this time down to Antarctica, joined a cruise, was a lecturer there, and I've been down to Antarctica so many times. And again, getting back to Andy's question, I'm shooting shots that I wouldn't have shot before. So I'm looking for slight differences. And of course, every time you go to a location, the weather and the climate, the icebergs with the penguins could be very different. And this iceberg was quite a ways from land, and so far out that these penguins were reliant on climbing out of the water and resting. And you can see they've used that iceberg for weeks and weeks and weeks, because they're eating krill. And when they defecate, you're seeing the results. So the color of the krill is what you're seeing on the ice. And as we got closer, and this is late in the day, had this been filmed, I doubt I would have gotten any sharp shots. This was after dinner, it was twilight, but it was pretty interesting to see this berg bouncing up and down, as was our boat. And these birds would just launch themselves out of the water and try to use the nails on their feet to try to climb this really sheer wall of ice. Many fell back and would only try again. So these are Adelie penguins. Most of the ones on the iceberg were chin straps. And this, my little Adelie penguin came up to me. I was on an iceberg photographing some details, and it popped out of the water, walked right up to me and went, "What?" And that was it. Okay, so as many people remember, I headed down to the border of Belize and Mexico. I think that was in late March or early April, to photograph American crocodiles. And these can be quite large animals. These particular ones were probably around 10 feet. And, crocodiles are pretty ferocious. They're different than alligators. They've got a lot of teeth and very pointed snouts. And in Africa, they're a force to be reckoned with. But in the Caribbean and in the waters off Mexico and Belize, they're a little more chill. They eat birds that are wading in the shallows. This is kind of it's like that old movie about the anaconda, coming out and grabbing you. And, I was reliant on the bubble of my underwater housing, because they would literally drift up to you and stop when their snout hit the glass on my camera, which I kind of used as psychological protection. But I'm not the first one to have done this, and nobody's been injured by these guys. They just look like death coming towards you. Went down and photographed great gray owls at a nest, and then went and taught a class. And I'm just hitting the highlights. There were a lot of littler trips and workshops that we did, but this was noteworthy. We went down to Bandon, Oregon, when the smoke came up from the Bay Area and Northern California and hit as far north as Seattle, probably north of Seattle as well. So, but on the coast, this orange haze and smoke created different atmospheric conditions that were noteworthy. I mean, I got color palettes that I've not seen before, and it was just, for want of a better term, surreal. And so I was teaching a class with Gabrielle, and our clients, our participants rose to the challenge. Nobody whined about it, but it was a bit different. But we had opportunities like this, these overlapping sea stacks off the abandoned coast were pretty remarkable. And I love those things that look like a watercolor wash, which is what I used to do when I was a painter. And, coastal trees, again, when everything's shrouded in combination of fog and smoke, everything becomes a little more painterly.
Beautiful.
And we went down to Jedediah Smith Redwood State Park into California, because often when I've been down in the redwoods, unfortunately, it's been sunny days, and the sun in a deep forest is very difficult to photograph. So we knew with all the smoke that we would have even light. So we went down in there, and it was just magical and beautiful to look straight up these giant trees and have the height of the trees then with a combination of the mist and the smoke allowed the depth to be created. If it was all just black and white, it would be difficult to perceive distance and depth. And just some of the details from that journey. So then I went up to Mount Rainier a couple of times this summer, photographed again the nighttime skies for Night on Earth, which comes out in September of this year. And in this image, if you look closely, and you would never have seen this if we were doing it through iPhones, you can see lights on Mount Rainier. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I've done this a couple of times, you get up from Camp Muir at 10,000 feet and you put on your clothes and crampons and ice axe, and then you head for the summit. And this was shot, I think, around 1 o'clock in the morning, I think. And they're already on their way to the summit. So you can see the lights of the stars and then the lights of humans on the mountain. And it becomes interesting. And I actually shot a similar shot like this on El Capitan a couple of years ago, where you can see where all the climbers on El Capitan at night are overnighting. And then, what was that comet called?
Neowise.
Neowise, you are good. Are you still drinking that tequila? I would never have been able to pull that one out. All right, Neowise, the comet, you can see reflected in reflection lakes. So that was fun. That was a nice diversion. And again, ISO here probably would have been around 2,000 to 4,000. That's basically the range, 2,000, 4,000, and trying to attain a shutter speed of 30 seconds or less. Once it gets longer, then all the stars become kind of little oblong shapes. And so that can be fine, but I prefer the pinpointed stars. Went to Yellowstone in September. I had great opportunities with a pack of wolves that were devouring an elk. And I didn't want to show all the devouring of the elk, but here they were crossing a river to and from. And it was a great, it was close enough that we were able to get great shots of these wolves, which are always a tough subject. And then on the same day, there was this beautiful grizzly that took down an elk. And that was right on the Yellowstone River. And of that trip, I did like this rather obtuse shot of a red fox hunting in the grasses. So I'm always looking for those reflections or something that's a little less predictable. As with this shot, a great blue heron in a marsh very close to Seattle. So I love challenging my audience to see maybe a subject in a little different way. So reflections become kind of not a signature item of mine, but something I look for. And of course, a very sharp heron is just slightly inverted and below. And that same heron was eating carp and other fish in this little lake. And this is right close to Seattle, and it's a great place. And in that same little pond were these hooded mergansers eating fish, and it was just fun to watch them. And hooded mergansers are a tough little duck to photograph, but when there's a lot of fish, they were just going to town. And the beautiful male of that species as well. So great light. The yellow is cottonwood trees reflected in the lake late in the afternoon. Okay, so that's I was playing with water, and I went up to Fidalgo Island. There's a lake on this island, kind of north of Seattle, and I was focusing with a 50 millimeter shallow depth of field. I was having a friend drop a tiny pebble in the water, and I was just practicing on shooting very fast shutter speeds. And these are some of the, and again, I've never done this before, but what the hell? I had an afternoon, and I'm trying to always find a new subject, and water, which I've been shooting a lot of as of late. I wanted to do these kind of abstracts. And this, again, I've bounced up my ISO easily to 2000, and I'm shooting at least 1,000th of a second, if not faster. So it's a very shallow depth of field, very fast exposure. I don't see any of this when I'm shooting. I can't process it. As intelligent as I am, I'm not quite seeing this. And so, you look at the results after the fact. And I like this one as well, all these different drops coming out. And it was just a tiny, tiny grain of rock that we were dropping in, but it was like, look, you never imagine that much water is being displaced. So that was fun. And Hawaii. So just a little over a week ago, Paramal and I traveled to Hawaii. His wife and kid were on a different island in Hawaii. So he had suddenly, for the first time this year, like 10 days where he wasn't obligated to take care of the son or, share the responsibility. And so I said I'd go with him somewhere, and we wound up with Hawaii. And I got really low on the beach, and I was getting these waves coming in. Normally, if you shoot waves coming in, you've got the ocean behind, but I wanted just water and sky. And so I was, again, like taking a picture and then running back as the water would come my way. But I do like the color of this water. This is in Kona. We're on the Big Island, and these are the curls of the waves coming in. 200 millimeter shot, very fast shutter speed. The water almost looks like glass or ice at this point. So very fast shutter speed. And then I got in the water and was photographing giant mantas at night. It's a thing in Kona. And I love this shot, but I have no idea how I got this. I mean, I'm shooting in the dark. It's nighttime. They've got lights to attract small animals, from which the giant 10-foot across manta rays come in and swoop up all the tiny animals. And this is what a couple of those mantas look like. So it's kind of cool. I don't even know what these fish are. I haven't even done the research to know what I'm shooting. And again, we're at night in the ocean. We have no fins, and it was a challenge. But I love these shots. So, at first I was kind of cursing all these little narrow pencil-like fish, but in fact, they make the shot. The combination of their design along with the manta ray makes it something beyond just a trophy shot of a manta ray. And again, the lights that they put in the water attracts all these tiny little fish or crustaceans or whatever they are, phytoplankton, I don't even know yet. And it's what brings in the manta rays. So here's one coming up out of the depths. And again, I'm just clicking away. So I shot a lot, got a few, I'll claim it.
Chris Tompkins says they're needlefish.
Oh, those are needlefish. Okay, does Chris Thompson know what the little things are?
Maybe, I can ask.
That's fast, I'm out of tequila now. Almost done. Okay, well, we'll get back to everybody on that. Green sea turtle. After that, we switched over to Hilo, and we were playing with not playing with, but I was photographing green sea turtles in little tiny bays, really close to the town site of Hilo.
Our Chris said it was plankton.
Plankton, okay. All right, so the green sea turtles, and then luck would have it on our first night in Hilo, we're going to get up the next day at 5 o'clock and drive halfway across the island to photograph little tiny red birds that are really special to the islands. And in the middle of the night, Bruce Omori, who's a good friend of mine, got a great gallery over there, woke us up at 10:30 and said, it's going off. And I said, what's going off? The volcano. It had been dormant for 2.5 years. But on the first night that we arrived in Hilo, it goes off. We're up there 1 hour after it started, and I was photographing. So good things happen to bad people. That's all I can say. And
speaking of, Paramal's watching.
Oh, Paramal's watching. Okay, I better be nice then. So this was shot right at dusk, and the blueness of the twilight is, and this is the second night. We went 3 nights in a row. The second night we went to a different location, and people, I love the silhouettes of people against the volcano. And you can see the gal on the very far right is photographing her boyfriend, and he's like illuminating his face with some sort of light. Yeah, I love these candid shots. I'm shooting that with a 400 millimeter, so I'm a long ways away from them. And here's a different side of the volcano, and you can't quite see it, but there's all sorts of stars in the sky. So you got the light of the earth, of the magma, illuminating the plume, and then the blueness is the moon above, and then there's the stars. So I really like this, and this will be in that book on Night on Earth.
Bruce says hi as well.
Oh, and Bruce is watching this too. So Bruce and Paramal and I were like trouble to everybody else on that island. But this is one of my favorite shots. It was the last night we went up there again, and it's right at dusk. So you've got that blue and that orange, which of course you know is complementary colors. And then the lingering light on the horizon is illuminating the top of the plume. So that's, for a bad, ugly year, not too bad. I look back with fondness over being able to get out occasionally and doing these, because I've got to keep those projects going and staying sane. So I'm gonna turn this off. All right.
That may require Kyle.
Uh-oh.
Close it.
So we started, so we're an on-time airline. Give me more questions. I'll finish the last 5 minutes of this with a few more questions, and then we'll see everybody on the 2nd of February. That is, if I'm not eaten by an animal in Kenya. All right. Maureen Elliott is a good friend of mine from Portland, Oregon. What animal has been most satisfying to capture on film? Which one did you have to work the hardest to get the shot? I have answered this earlier. The snow leopard is definitely the hardest animal I've tried to get. I've got shots, but I need to go back. It's just the elevation, the cold, and the difficulty to find these cats is extraordinary. People have spent a large part of their careers specifically shooting snow leopards, and they've gotten some great shots. But as you've discovered, I shoot everything, and I'm traveling all the time. So I make surgical strikes into areas and come back, and you have to have that kind of energy and luck to be able to come away with shots. Sometimes I'm lucky and sometimes I'm not, but that animal, definitely marine, is the most difficult I've shot. And as far as the most satisfying one on film, really, they're all great to me. Whatever I'm photographing in the moment is the most critical one in my mind. Patty Burns, 2 questions. Any tips for capturing the moon? Yeah, shoot that largely at 1/50th of a second or 200th of a second at f8 or f11. That's what it typically would have been with film. I don't think it would change to a digital, but you can go on any site and talk about photographing the moon, and there'll be multiple sites that talk about the exact exposure. Because if you look in the nighttime sky up at the moon, it seems like you need to really overexpose it or get it, but in fact, it's very, very bright. So you're not trying to get any detail in the sky around it. It's just about the textures and the craters of the moon. And so you have to have a fast enough shutter speed.
We have a question from Paramount.
Paramount.
It says, how was Tequila while taking volcano pics?
Oh, that's right. So
Paramount purchased for you.
yeah, Paramount snuck into a convenience store and bought little tequila bottles for me. And after we were shooting the volcano, even though it wasn't in a national park, we did have a sip of tequila to toast our great fortune. I mean, it was extraordinary. I was there 2.5 years ago with Bruce Omori, and we were doing aerial shots over the lava. And then a month later, it all ended, and that was it. And so the night that we came back, it started again. As I say, good things, bad things happen to good people. No, good things happen to bad people.
Probably both.
That's right. Okay. So is there something we need to do differently than what I've got?
Nope, we just hit that end button.
Okay.
When you're ready. So you ready to say your goodbyes?
Oh, are we done?
6:15, 45 minutes.
Oh, did I say goodbye?
Not yet. It's still live.
Am I still live?
Yep.
Oh, I knew all that. I knew that. Okay. All right. So we'll see everybody on February 2nd. And again, the best question that comes in, we'll give a whole year, 26 episodes of Pathways to Creativity. For the rest of you guys, get out there and buy that, because I want you all better photographers by the time I see you in a month. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed Zoom.